stop feeling like a failure. That's what today's video is about. How to stop feeling like a failure, how to stop feeling like a loser, how to stop feeling so inadequate. I get emails from people a lot. So the more that I've grown building up my list and having different people who have read my work, I get emails from people with all sorts of different situations and scenarios. It's actually really amazing to hear from people and just to hear their life experiences and perspectives. Because human beings are just awesome in that they have so many unique stories. Anyway, one of the number one emails I get from people is that they feel like a failure. They feel like a loser. They look at how their life has gone so far and they're just not happy with it. And, maybe their marriage didn't work out. Maybe they can't get married. They can't find anyone. Maybe they're in the wrong job. Maybe they want to switch, but they don't know how. Maybe they're broke. Maybe they're overweight. They're depressed. All sorts of different things. And it all leads to this kind of depressed tone in these messages where they're not just looking at themselves as someone who has failed. Okay? Let's parse out that distinction there. They're not looking at themselves as someone who has failed, as someone who has inherent worth, but things aren't going the way they want them to right now, right? No, they look at themselves as a failure. And that's what keeps so many people held back. Because when you realize that the different moments in your life and the different things you do are just behaviors in situations, you understand that that's something that you can change. But a lot of the people that talk to me and a lot of people in general have this feeling that if they don't reach a certain benchmark, if they don't have this sense of worth that matches up with what they see around them, then that means that they're a loser. It means that they're a failure. It means that they lack an inherent worth. And that's definitely not true. I mean, there are some people that are abject failures in life, okay? There are people who are in prison for the rest of their life. Chances of success are pretty low, even though people reform themselves in prison too. There are some people who have really gotten themselves into bad situations. But for the most part, I genuinely do not believe that most people are losers. I don't believe that there are that many losers in the world, period. I definitely don't think you're a loser. Because if you're someone who's watching a video trying to figure out how to stop feeling like a failure, then you're not a failure. You're already trying to do something. That act alone shows that while your self-image is still a little down right now, you still have hope that you can make that transition and you can turn things around. So I'm going to talk about this from different angles. I just wrote a blog post about this. I'll leave that in the description too, but I'm going to highlight some of the things that I put in there and talk about how you can stop feeling like a failure and start to change your self-image. One of the things that I noticed that was especially weird is that I've gotten a lot of messages from people who are young, people who are in their 20s, who are telling me they feel like a failure. People who've just graduated college are telling me that they feel like a failure. And this is pretty much impossible, right? Like I said, you can make major mistakes and screw up your life totally. But for the most part, if you're young, you have so much time ahead of you to improve that you should not be feeling like a failure whatsoever. Excuse my phone ringing, but we're going to keep the video going anyways. You should not be feeling like a failure because you have room. So I'm thinking to myself, why would young people especially feel like failures? And why does this feeling carry over, as they grow? I've come up with the answer that there's just so much comparison and status and signaling in our society today that you just look at yourself like a failure when you compare yourself to all the different stimuli that's going around. You know, everyone's posting their best life on Facebook. Nobody posts the shitty parts of their lives on Facebook. No, they post when they're having fun. They post when they're having friends and traveling. And then you have Instagram. You know, don't even get me started on Instagram. Everybody is beautiful, has six-pack abs, lives a perfect life, makes $1 million, and travels every single day, according to Instagram. And then you have LinkedIn, people showing off their careers and different positions they've made. And you have people like me. People like me do add to the cesspool a little bit too, right? Because, you know, while we're trying to share positive messages, trying to help you find your purpose in life, trying to help you be more passionate and do the things you love, you almost start to feel bad about yourself that you don't have this perfect, magical passion, that you're not running a six-figure business right away, that you're not doing exactly what you want to do at every moment of your life. With a bar that high, it's no wonder people feel like failures. I just talked about the story that, what's her name from Full House? Lori Loughlin. So Lori Loughlin is facing decades in prison because she tried to bribe some Ivy League or top tier university to let her kid in. Why did she do this? For status. Because it's a status symbol to go to an Ivy League college or one of the top universities. And this status infection has infected everybody. And we all have these carefully curated versions of our life that we want people to see. And throughout all of that, we forget that we're just human beings, right? We forget that we live on a planet, on this big globe that floats around in the middle of fucking space, in a solar system that is one of a bajillion solar systems, which is one of a bajillion galaxies in this infinite universe. And we evolved or were created, whatever you believe, to become this species with sentience. And the odds of you being the sperm that made it out are like 1,000,000 bazillion to 1. So you're like this infinite cosmic miracle of a person. You're this collection of random atoms in DNA that was improbable to even come about in a universe that's improbable to even come about. We're worried about status. We're worried about Instagram and LinkedIn and comparing ourselves with people. So, you know, there's just that lack of gratitude, and it happens to everybody. It happens to me too. You don't even realize how lucky you are just to like be in the game and be able to play it. And that's where I like to start, is always try to ground yourself in gratitude. And I know that's hard to do, especially when your life is not where it's at. When my life was not where it's at, it was hard for me to think to myself, oh, I'm a cosmic miracle, while I'm sitting in my shitty ass apartment with rats crawling in the walls. It was hard for me to think of myself as a cosmic miracle back then, right? So I get it. I get how it feels if what you want is here and you're down here, and you feel so cemented in that you don't think there's an escape. You know, because it's all about momentum. Momentum goes both ways. It's like momentum in the positive sense. When you achieve something, it makes you more confident and it makes you more likely to achieve further goals, which fuels your confidence. That's why the rich get richer. The people who are more successful keep getting successful, because that confidence motivates them to keep going, right? But then it also works in the opposite direction. The more stuck you get, the harder it is. The more weight you gain, the harder it is to start working out. The broker you are, the harder it is to save money. The lazier you are, the harder it is to take that first step. So what do? You know, there's all these self-help books and videos like this that try to give you different angles to look at it from. And those are helpful. But what worked for me was literally the purest sense of dissatisfaction that I could find. the purest sense of dissatisfaction. I'll tell you the story. And if you've read my blog, you've probably heard the story before. I was sitting in my apartment. I had been watching some motivation videos on YouTube, just like you're doing right now. And I was sitting there and I just looked around. I looked around my crappy apartment. I was just thinking about my past and all the mistakes I made. I mean, I dropped out of school with a bunch of tens of thousands of dollars of debt, dropped out of school. I was getting high every day. I was drinking every day. There was periods I didn't leave the house for weeks. Like, I had really messed things up bad, right? And so I'm sitting here and I'm just like, no. Like, I had this visceral awakening and I literally stood up and I'm like, I'm not going to fucking live my life like this. This isn't Ayo. This is not going to be the output of all the gifts and talents that I have, because I knew that I had gifts and talents, and you do too. But you feel bad about yourself for squandering them. And then you get to this place where you're stuck and you made a couple wrong moves and you're just like, oh shit. No, you need to use those negative feelings to your advantage. Really feel how deep that dissatisfaction goes. And you just got to get as fed up as you possibly can. I mean, you just have to get this pure sense of discontentment that you just extrapolate out the rest of your life and you're just like, no, this isn't going to happen. So then I took the next steps, like you're doing right now. And there is something to be said about really immersing yourself in just basic self-improvement things, right? So regardless of what's making you feel like a failure, making you feel like a loser, like you're coming up short, there are certain things that you do that are external cues that are going to signal to you that you're not a loser, that you're not a failure. So before I discovered that I was going to start writing, before I had lined things up to make more money, before I had any concrete steps, I just had that moment where I felt fed up. And then I started just learning and immersing myself in self-improvement. And I did things from the outside in that just makes it hard for you to feel like a loser. So I started reading books. I read something like 50 books in the span of a year. Now, I didn't make more money that year, not much at least. My situation didn't change totally, but it's really hard for you to look at yourself when you're doing something positive. Sure, my income had not increased, but it was harder for me to feel like a failure after having read 50 books. I didn't know why I was doing it. I didn't know what it would lead to, but I felt less like a loser. I didn't feel like a loser. I worked out. I got in really good shape. When your mind and your body are working well, it's hard for you to feel like a loser. It's hard for you to feel like a loser when 3 times a week you dedicate yourself to an hour's worth of picking up metal and moving it repeatedly, developing that sort of discipline. And again, going back to how do I develop the discipline and get started? Get super fed up, like so fed up. Take that feeling of being fed up and take it to your first workout session and take it out on those weights, right? Take it out on that run. Use it when you feel like quitting. Guys, there's no self-help prescription that's going to fully close that gap between thought and action, right? No matter what I tell you, there's still that kind of infinitesimally small space where you have to make that decision. So you have to just do it. I don't have a better answer for you in that regard. But if you start to take basic improvement steps, working out, reading, getting enough sleep, then you have more energy and that initial kernel of self-confidence that you can use to tackle some of the real issues that are causing you to feel like a loser, whether that's finding friends or getting a mate, whether that's switching your career, whether that's trying to start something of your own, right? And then you take those little steps, guided by that dissatisfaction, and then also aided by that confidence you're building by working from the outside in. People always, I've heard a lot that you can increase your self-image kind of by thinking your way into it, saying affirmations, loving yourself more. No, absolutely not. You can't trick yourself into loving yourself. You have to have some sort of external cue that sends a subconscious signal to you saying that you're worthwhile. If someone you're attracted to looks at you and tells you you look good, it's going to convince you more that you look good than looking in a mirror and trying to convince yourself, right? So you work from the outside in and do things that make you feel more confident and more competent. And then you do these things for a long period of time. 5 years ago, I was dead broke. 5 years ago, I moved into a new apartment, had no job, and had like $50 to my name. Luckily, by the grace of whoever, I found a job working at a video store for $10 an hour, got promoted to being the manager there. And all it took for me to stop feeling like a loser was to have gainful employment, work on my body, learn, and then because I had just been working on myself without that sense of direction where it was going to go, I had started posting those Facebook statuses like I told you about in the other video. I was posting positive content, which led to somebody finding me and asking me to write. And then I solved that passion and purpose problem. So I was putting out good energy into the universe, into the world, after convincing myself that I wasn't a loser by just doing basic self-improvement things. And then when you have that energy you're putting out into the world, that's when you start to spot opportunities, right? So when you're focusing on just basic self-improvement just to get yourself at that base level of confidence, that's when you notice the opportunity to become a writer. That's when you're standing up straighter with your eyes open so you can see that people of the opposite sex are looking at you. When you were feeling like a loser with your head drooped down, you couldn't see anything. And that's a good metaphor for the world. You're not going to see those opportunities with your head down. So that combination of dissatisfaction and taking basic self-improvement steps can mean everything. And you can look up 6 to 12 months from making that initial step. And then you'll see that opportunity that could be life-changing for you. So you're taking the right steps right now. Like you're doing a good job just by focusing on some sort of content that uplifts you. Some people give self-help a bad rap, but kind of bathing yourself in self-improvement material is a good idea because there's so much negativity and status comparison and outrage in the world that you kind of need to immerse yourself in it to drown all that stuff out so that you can actually focus on improving yourself. That's all I have for today. You are not a failure. You are a worthy human being. And with some basic self-improvement steps, you'll build a base level of confidence, which will help you spot opportunities to change your life. All right. We'll see you next time.